Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
Britt returns to her apartment to find Jason inside looking at her meds, and she's pissed. Jason has a lot of questions, and knows from connections there are no medicines on the request that can put Huntington's in absolution as she's in. He suspects she's in just as deep as she was at the Five Poppies, that Dalton and Sidwell are ever involved, and it all ties to her force of this wonder drug. Jason wants to help her and has a former intelligence friend who wants a sample of her meds to reverse mastermind them, which will free her from her supplier. He says this could help millions with Huntington's. Britt says she can't do this. Jason says he's always accepted her for who she's, a croaker who helps people, someone who tried to shield her mama from watching her deteriorate, and someone who cares about Rocco, Nathan, and Brad. He says she's so much further than she gives herself credit for. Plans change. At the sanitarium, Portia is in bed being covered when Isaiah checks on her. She's feeling better and is on N4. Dr. Navarro verified she's tired and dehydrated, and she'll be released hereafter for a many days bed rest. He asks her to spend those days with him at his cabin. She says that sounds like a dream. Suddenly, Trina walks by and assumes she's interposing in test. Portia says Dr. Gannon was going over her treatment options. Isaiah leaves them, and Trina asks her mama when she was going to tell her about the baby. Portia asks how she set up out, and Trina admits she heard Stella and Marshall talking about it at Thanksgiving. Portia explains that she planned to tell no bone until her first trimester was over, but her father set up out, and she had to tell him. Trina asks if this changes anything for her parents, but Portia says she and her father still have other issues. Trina knows it might not count if her pater is in jail for shooting Drew. Trina explains she set up out when she got a call from her pater's counsel, and she went to see him in jail, where Jordan showed up. Trina is sorry for saying the J word, her mama doesn't need that stress. Portia only wants her son to concentrate on academy, herself, and Kai, and not worry about her parents. Trina knows one thing: this baby will be lucky to have her mama and pater. As parents, new substantiation changes everything. Christina brings home food from Bobby's for her mama and asks how work is going. Alexis says the charges against Willow may be dropped, but this could turn into a disaster for them. However, Drew may not hold up his end of the deal and let them keep seeing Scout, because technically, if the case against Willow falls piecemeal, Christina is upset about both Scout and Michael. This could each work in Willow's favor when it comes to the kiddies' guardianship, and she fears what Michael might do. In the PCPD holding cells, Drew tells Curtis that they both know he shot him, but Curtis isn't the one Drew wants to see go down for the crime. Curtis says he didn't shoot him, but if he goes down for it, Drew will go down with him. Curtis says he'll have to swear to a motive, that Drew blackmailed his woman and used his congressional power to go after his Aunt Stella. In the interrogation room, Nathan and Drew are stunned by what they saw on the business cam footage. Dante asks an officer to pull a statement that contradicts some new substantiation. He asks for Willow's statement. Turner comes in to speak with Dante and Nathan, and the Bobbies explain that their new substantiation doesn't point to Curtis, but to Willow. Willow is driving down Drew's road at the time he was shot, seen both ahead and after the firing passed on the cameras. Turner says this contradicts Willow's statement. Dante says, with this new information, who does she want to go after, Willow or Curtis? Turner wants them to keep following up on this substantiation on Willow, as they'll be pacing with her trial after all. Also, Turner calls Alexis at home to let her know the charges against Willow aren't being dropped. She discloses that new substantiation has been set up, which will be in her inbox shortly. Turner also tells Nathan and Dante to drop the charges against Curtis and to keep the Selena Wu substantiation in their fund for after time if demanded. She has to go to the judge to get further camera clearances for private citizens' homes and businesses in the area, and Dante steps out to start the paperwork to release Curtis. Nina walks in on a scene. In her office, Nina tells the slightly dressed Michael and Jacinda they must be out of their damn minds. Michael asks for sequestration, and Nina says, please, finish having coitus in my office. She steps out so they can dress, and latterly threatens to tell HR about this, but Michael says he advised them about their relationship the nanosecond Jacinda began working here. Nina says HR might be okay with this, but family court wouldn't be. Nina gloats to Michael that Willow is innocent, and the PCPD has a new suspect. She says she and Drew will make sure Willow wins visit and ultimately guardianship of the kiddies, leaving Michael with his coitus worker. Michael ultimately leaves, and Nina tells Jacinda that all these dresses need to be fumed, and the red dress she had on has to go to the cleansers. She also tells Jacinda she knows she's Team Michael, but if she wants a new launch at life, this is the place to be. She's the top of the food chain and controls all of this. As Nina scrubs her office, Nathan calls his family and says she needs to come to the station because Commodity has happened and he needs her there. Before she leaves, Nina reminds Jacinda that Michael will get relief of her as soon as he gets what he wants, which changes like the rainfall with him. Nina says Jacinda no way knows when she might find herself alone and demanding a friend. Back at the station, Dante finds Drew with Curtis in lockup. He tells Curtis he has good news for him and bad news for Drew. Willow makes another bad move. Chase sneaks Willow onto the Quartermain grounds. In the kitchen, she tells him the charges against her are going to be dropped and asks if he can please help her see her kitties. That's when Brooke Lynn walks by and says Willow needs to leave now. Willow tells Brooke Lynn that she came to tell Chase the charges against her are about to be dropped. She'll no way forget how great Chase has been to her, and right now, she wants to see her kitties. Brooke Lynn notes that Willow is asking her hubby to break a court order and risk his job, which is a lousy way to repay him for being a friend. Willow is sorry and cries that it's hard being down from her kitties. Still, she no way should have put them in this position, and she says she'll go. She asks them not to say anything about Moment, as she didn't see the kitties, so no detriment done. She also sneaks off. Alone, Brooke Lynn blasts Chase for letting Willow take advantage of him. Chase says he wasn't going to let her see the kitties, but he believes in her, and she's a good person. Brooke Lynn sympathizes with Willow, but he needs to step back and let Willow's own poor choices play out. Chase knows it would have been awful if Michael had seen Willow come in then. That's when Michael arrives and says, yeah, it would. Brooke Lynn and Chase explain that Willow came to partake news of the charges against her being dropped, and they induced her to leave before the kiddies saw her. Michael wants them to subscribe statements that Willow was then and defied the judge, but Chase refuses. Across city, Willow shows up at Alexis' place, hoping her counsel has good news. Immediately Alexis wants to know why Willow has been lying to the police and to her. She can't defend Willow if she's not honest with her. Back at the sanitarium, Curtis arrives, having heard about Portia, and asks Isaiah where his woman is. Isaiah says she's resting, but cannot have any stress. He directs Curtis to Portia's room. Curtis walks into Portia's room, and Trina is thrilled to see her pater is out of jail. Curtis asks if the baby is okay, and Portia says they're both okay. Curtis assures them all that everything will be okay now. In the show's final moments. At the sanitarium, Isaiah looks in on Portia and hears Trina and Curtis suggest to the croaker that she come home to rest. She's been at the Metro Court, so they can take care of her. Isaiah nods to Portia, and she smiles at Trina and Curtis. She accepts the offer. At the QS, Chase tells Michael that he'll have to subpoena him because he's not giving a statement or coming between a mama and her kitties. Michael and Chase get in each other's faces, and Brooke Lynn steps in to calm them down. At the PCPD, Nathan tells Nina that Willow has been lying, and there's new substantiation placing her son near Drew's house the night he was shot. The charges against Curtis have been dropped, and Willow's trial is moving forward. In the team room, Turner gives Dante clearances to summon substantiation from cams along Willow's route that night. She asks if he's going to be okay getting on the stage and attesting against his former family-in-law. At her place, Alexis shows Willow the footage of her driving on Drew's road the night he was shot. Drew shows up and learns about the new videotape substantiation. Willow swears it wasn't her, that she didn't shoot him, she just drove by his place. Drew believes her, but Alexis warns them that this taradiddle will make effects a lot more delicate once they go to trial. Eventually, above Bobby's, Jason tells Britt he's no way judged her, he's only wanted to help her, and he's not about to turn his reverse on her. He asks her to let him help her. She ends pulling him into a kiss, and also tells him, not a chance. General Hospital suckers here talk about Caesar Faison and his possible rejuvenation. Moment we look at what a monster he's and why Port Charles should be absolutely alarmed if he's back. We're going to dig into the uber villain of all villains, the Bone. That Anna Devane is so spooked is back from the dead, Caesar Faison. General Hospital Anna's notes. If you flash back, before she was abducted, Anna really started to believe that Faison might be alive indeed, though he was apparently killed 7 times ago at the hands of his own son, Peter August, aka Heinrich Faison. Anna lately said if anybody could pause everybody into a false sense of security and pretend to be dead for this long, it would be Faison. Also on her little list of notes she's timber in prison is the fact that there's been rejuvenescences tied to him because, 3 of Faison's kitties were apparently dead and now 2 of them just resurfaced, Nathan West and Brett Westbourne. That means there's a chance that the worst of Faison's generate, Peter August, might be the coming one to come back from the dead. I do anticipate him to either return or we find out he's living in Nathan's head because his recollections were implanted in his family. So, it's absolutely possible that Faison is also back, at least for a short bow. And that's why I just wanted to remind you all the good reasons that Anna is upset that this Joe isn't dead and what it means for Port Charles if Caesar Faison really is alive, and that's notoriety differently sprain in the jar on Kevin Collins' desk. Caesar Faison's twisted history and preoccupation with Anna now. If you do flashback, Faison debuted on General Hospital 35 times agone. It was back in 1990. It was a veritably weird origin story that had a lot of depth to it. Anna and Holly Sutton had this nurse when they were kiddies. And that woman was Faison's mama. So, deep backstory. And also when he showed up, he was originally working for the crime combination, the Bone. Called DVX. He worked his way up until Faison was actually running DVX. Anna had turned double agent back in the day. It sounded like she was betraying the WSB when she went to work for DVX, but she was actually trying to insinuate and take it down from the inside. Also he got on her radar and Faison came absolutely obsessed with Anna. And his obsession lasted all the way till his death. Meanwhile, Liesel Albrecht was obsessively in love with Faison and she abominated his compulsive love for Anna. Now that Faison's dead and gone, Anna and Liesel kind of get along despite abhorring each other for times. But Faison was the issue and he was out of the picture. Also, Liesel got out from under his spell. That helped a lot. But back when she still loved Faison, we saw Liesel helping Faison fake Robin Scorpio's death. And that tortured Anna. Master of disguise. Faison's reign of terror and villainous alliances over the times. Faison has abducted Anna numerous times. Faison formerly wore a mask to appear as Duke Lavery, who was the love of Anna's life. And it worked well enough for Faison to get really close to Anna. But she was affrighted when she set out she had been involved with Faison, who was pretending to be Duke. Faison didn't work alone. He generally had some other villain that was uniting with him. And he worked with a lot of the big villains on GH. He worked with Jerry Jacks when he was poisoning Port Charles's water force. Faison also colluded with villainous Helena Cassadine. She and Faison did a bunch of mind control and memory mapping trials. And they were the Bones. That had Drew Kane allowing he was really his binary, Jason Morgan. Faison was also veritably professed at pretending to be other people and doing bad deeds. There was a lot of mask work back in the day and we had other actors actually playing the part because of the mask thing. In addition to using the Duke mask to date Anna, Faison actually was wearing it when he shot Jason and demurred him into the harbor hoping he'd die. And of course he came back. Faison also tried to kill Robert Scorpio while he was wearing a Luke Spencer mask. That was back when Tony Geary was actually playing the part. A heritage of evil. Faison's poisonous influence on his children. So Faison is dangerous. He has brainwashed, abducted, boggled, and tortured so numerous people on General Hospital. Plus, he's cheated death numerous times. One notable time was when Helena Cassadine blew up a boat he was on, but he survived because he's a cockroach. You can't kill him. Faison, by the way, is also a really terrible parent. He's the reason Britt was such a villain when she first came to GH because she was always trying to prove herself to Faison by doing bad. Also we set about Nathan was Faison's, but Liesel had her family Madeline Reeves raise him to keep him down from Faison, which is why he came out good. Peter was another poisonous seed of Faison's. Peter is the generative Faison and Anna's wrong twin, Alex. And she had hidden him down. So he'd been, I believe, espoused by people. But also with Valentine Cassidy's help, Faison got his hands on Peter and was raising him, just treating him terribly. Faison let Britt and Peter both know, of course, they were no way good enough for him. But ultimately Faison transferred Peter down to boarding academy. And also Valentine started watching out for him and came a much better father figure because he felt shamefaced for giving Peter to Faison. But in the end, Peter turned out to be nearly as bad as his pater. Indeed, though he didn't want to be. And he was super jealous of Nathan, who was the good son. Is Faison back? The nipping suggestions pointing to a villain's resurrection. Let's just hope that it's either Faison or Peter back as part of this plot. And they're not both back, because that would be too numerous villains. It'd be truly scary if Faison and his bad seed son were both back on the scene. However, Peter killed Faison in a fit of jealous rage in 2018, if you flash back. He'd been shot and Faison was in the sanitarium and Peter came into his room and finished him off. So with Nathan and Britt back, it seems decreasingly likely that Faison could be back. Anna is being held interned below Windermere right now and she suspects Faison is involved. And him working with Sidwell is another truly intimidating notion, but it would be veritably much like him since he likes to have co-conspirators and Sidwell is eventually evil. Plus, we know that Britt is working on trials related to her pater. Faison's final exploration and Sidwell's the one backing it and Pascal is there to apply effects. With Anna taken for no real clear reason that we've seen yet, that's another red flag that Faison may be back and before Anna's hijacking. Plus, Faison loves to lurk down in the vault and secret passages of Ladle Island and below Windermere. He's hidden out there several times in the history. That would absolutely explain why Sidwell bought the property. So, we're going to find out soon who's the architect, the Uber master that Sidwell is working for. And it veritably well could be Faison and everybody should be scarified. The reckoning began quietly, almost reverently, like a baptism without water, when Britt Westbourne returned to her apartment expecting solitude and instead found Jason Morgan standing inside, studying her medication with an expression that told her immediately this was no casual visit, and her anger flared hot and sharp as she demanded to know why he was there and what right he had to touch anything that belonged to her. Yet Jason did not back down, calmly explaining that nothing about her miraculous improvement made sense, because his sources, people who knew the pharmaceutical world far better than press releases ever could, confirmed there was no drug currently capable of pushing Huntington's disease into the kind of remission Britt was experiencing, and as the truth pressed in on her, Jason laid out his suspicions with painful clarity, connecting her sudden health to the same shadowy underworld she had once navigated at the Five Poppies, invoking familiar names like Dalton and Sidwell and suggesting that once again she was paying a hidden price for a miracle that did not come freely, which Britt rejected fiercely, insisting she could not risk losing what little stability she had gained, but Jason countered with something far more dangerous than accusations, hope, telling her he had an old intelligence contact willing to analyze her medication, reverse engineer it, and strip away the control her supplier had over her life, a process that would not only free Britt but potentially save millions suffering from Huntington's, and when Britt tried to shut him out emotionally, Jason dismantled her defenses not with force but with truth, reminding her that he had always accepted her exactly as she was, a doctor who dedicated her life to healing others, a daughter who tried desperately to spare her mother the agony of watching her fade, a woman capable of deep loyalty and love for people like Rocco, Nathan, and even Brad, insisting she was far more than the sum of her worst decisions, words that struck Britt at her core and nearly broke her resolve as her anger softened into vulnerability, just as elsewhere in Port Charles plans were shifting under the weight of consequence, beginning at the hospital where Portia Robinson lay in bed under observation, hooked to and for and exhausted but stable, Reassured by Isaiah Gannon that dehydration and fatigue had caused her scare and that with rest she would be fine, a prognosis that allowed him to gently invite her to spend her recovery days at his cabin, an offer that sounded like sanctuary to Portia's weary soul until Trina unexpectedly walked in and instantly sensed something unspoken, forcing Portia to explain the pregnancy she had been keeping secret, admitting she intended to wait until the first trimester passed before telling anyone, though circumstances, and Marshall's concern, had altered that plan. And while Trina hoped this baby might heal the rift between her parents, Portia confessed that deeper issues remained unresolved, particularly with Curtis possibly facing prison for shooting Drew Kane, a fear Trina shared as she revealed she had learned the truth after receiving a call from Curtis' lawyer and visiting him in jail, where Jordan Ashford's presence added yet another layer of emotional strain, prompting Portia to urge her daughter to focus on her future and let the adults carry their burdens, even as Trina quietly affirmed that this child would be blessed to have parents who loved fiercely despite their flaws. While not far away, Christina Corinthos Davis brought comfort food from Bobby's to Alexis Davis and inadvertently stirred a hornet's nest when Alexis admitted that if the charges against Willow Kane were dropped entirely, it could unravel everything they had negotiated with Drew, since proving Willow's innocence was the linchpin that allowed Christina continued access to Scout, a fragile deal that could collapse if the case imploded prematurely, leaving Christina worried not only for Scout but for how Michael Corinthos might retaliate if the legal tides turned in Willow's favor, concerns that echoed chillingly at the PCPD where Drew confronted Curtis in holding, asserting that although he believed Curtis shot him, he didn't want him to take the fall, an accusation Curtis flatly denied before issuing a blistering threat that if he went down, Drew would go down too, vowing to testify that Drew had blackmailed Portia and abused his congressional authority to target Stella Henry, exposing motives that could poison any jury, a threat that gained terrifying weight moments later when Nathan West and Dante Falconeri reviewed traffic cam footage that contradicted previous assumptions entirely, footage that placed Willow Kane driving past Drew's home at the precise time of the shooting, evidence that shattered her alibi and prompted ADA Justine Turner to pivot decisively, instructing the detectives to refocus their efforts on Willow and confirming that her trial would move forward after all, even as she ordered the charges against Curtis dropped for now and secured additional warrants to expand surveillance along Willow's route that night, developments she personally relayed to Alexis, delivering the devastating news that Willow's legal nightmare was far from over, while chaos of a different sort exploded at Crimson when Nina Reeves walked into her office to find Michael Corinthos and Jacinda Bracken barely dressed and breathtakingly careless, a sight that sent Nina into a rage so sharp it bordered on theatrical as she accused them of insanity, mockingly offered privacy so they could finish what they started, and later threatened HR intervention, only to be blindsided when Michael coolly revealed he had already disclosed the relationship, prompting Nina to pivot tactics and weaponize family court instead, smugly declaring that Willow would win visitation and custody while Michael clung to a woman she dismissed as disposable, a warning she reinforced after Michael stormed out by asserting dominance over Jacinda, ordering her to clean up, reminding her who controlled the food chain, and planting seeds of doubt by predicting Michael's inevitable abandonment, words she echoed once more before rushing to the station at Nathan's urgent summons, where she was blindsided by the truth that Willow had lied and that evidence placed her near Drew's house the night he was shot. Confirmation that the baptism of truth had begun and there would be no turning back, just as Willow herself made yet another catastrophic choice by sneaking onto the Quartermaine grounds with Chase's reluctant help, convinced the charges against her were collapsing and desperate to see her children, only to be confronted by Brooke Lynn Quartermaine, who rightfully accused her of asking Chase to violate court orders and risk everything he had already sacrificed, words that finally broke Willow's composure as she apologized through tears and agreed to leave, begging them to keep her visit secret, a plea that almost succeeded until Michael arrived moments later and demanded accountability, insisting Chase and Brooke Lynn sign statements documenting Willow's violation, a demand Chase refused outright, declaring he would not stand between a mother and her children, a standoff Brooke Lynn barely managed to defuse, even as across town Willow walked into Alexis' home seeking reassurance and instead faced fury, with Alexis demanding to know why Willow had lied to the police and to her own lawyer, warning that dishonesty would destroy any defense they had left, while at the hospital Curtis rushed to Portia's side after his release, reassured to find both her and the baby safe and offering promises of stability that sounded hopeful even as uncertainty loomed. And as the day closed with final judgments forming, Isaiah supported Portia's decision to recover at home. Surrounded by family, Michael and Chase nearly came to blows over principle and control. Turner handed Dante warrants that would widen the investigation and asked if he was prepared to testify against his former sister-in-law. Nathan delivered the crushing truth to Nina that Willow's trial was moving forward. Alexis showed Willow the damning footage of her car on Drew Street. Drew reaffirmed his belief in Willow's innocence even as Alexis warned that this lie would haunt them in court, and finally, above Bobby's, the baptism reached its most intimate moment as Jason told Britt he had never judged her, never abandoned her, and never would, asking one last time to let him help her reclaim her life, a plea that shattered Britt's defenses completely as she pulled him into a desperate, aching kiss before whispering the refusal that said everything about fear, love, and the terrible cost of miracles, sealing a day where encouraging words clashed with angry threats, where truth emerged like fire, and where every soul in Port Charles stood dripping with consequence, forever changed by what had finally been revealed.